Well, Vedacharya David Frawley joins us. Thanks very much, sir, for speaking to us. I want to address the elephant in the room. Will a Ram Mandir in Ayodhya be a threat or a symbol of a threat and subjugation of other communities, as is being claimed?
I think what we're seeing is typical political fear-mongering, particularly when parties are looking to an election that doesn't look very good for them. So we have to remember India was partitioned in, of course, 1947 into a Hindu majority India and a Muslim majority Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, continued with its culture, its religion, its expansion, but not one single Hindu temple was allowed to be restored by the Nehru government at that time, not even one. Not even the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, which is the national symbol. Sardar Patel happened to get the Somnath temple restored, but without Nehru's direct support. So there was the freezing of the status of temples in the British era. And we have to remember India is a very ancient country, and these temples were being restored by the Marathas when they were coming back into power after defeating the Mughals. They restored many of them. But after the British era ended, there was not an attempt to allow the Hindus to take back anything. And in this regard, India is not just a modern nation state like Britain or the United States. Many of these modern nation states didn't come in until fairly recent times anyway. India is also a culture and a civilization. And we have to remember the leaders of the Indian independence movement wanted a civilizational awakening in India, not just to be an imitation European nation state. Whether it was Sri Aurobindo, Tagore, even Gandhi said he was a proud Hindu. So, and now we see this very strange things that the idea of a Hindu majority country becomes Afghanistan or Pakistan. Remember, these are Muslim majority countries. So I think this is fear-mongering at election times, hoping that there will be problems so they can raise more issues. But what we should be seeing is a national pride awakening, that a civilization after these thousands of years can come back. And we must remember it has been proved that there was a temple there at Ayodhya. And we must also remember that this heritage should be restored. And it is great not only for India, but for all Asia. Ramayana is the most popular story, perhaps in history, but certainly in Asia. So it's time for a national pride, not just as one group over another. Even the Buddhists honored Sri Ram. So this is what we need today. If you want peace, you put out an aura of peace. You don't throw fear-mongering for prospective violence. And so let us look to the beauty and the wonder going on and use it as a moment of peace, harmony for all. Sri Ram is for everyone.
Dr. Frawley, I want to pick up on what you said earlier about the comparison being made between India or a Hindu Rashtra and what's happening in Pakistan and Afghanistan. The logic given to make that argument is that the presence of a Ram temple, or, you know, this whole hullabaloo over a Ram temple militates against the idea of secularism, which is what 21st century India demands.
Well, first of all, secularism is a questionable term. Secularism in Europe was to remove the power of the state, of the church over the state, which India did not have. True secularism is honoring also spiritual traditions. It is not suppressing one religion in favor of another. Hindus have never invaded any country imposing their religion. They have never set up an agenda to convert everyone to Hinduism. They don't say, if you don't become a Hindu, you go to hell, and God is only with us. They do not have a history of destroying other temples and groups. And then let me put this in an historical context. India wasn't the only country to become free of foreign rule and became independent. Now, you'll notice in Eastern Europe, the Christian countries there reclaimed many of their churches that had become mosques, whether it was Romania, Hungary, even over time, Greece. That was not considered to be communal. That was considered to be an honoring of their independence. And even if you look at Turkey today, they are taking the oldest church, over 1,000 years old, Hagia Sophia, and now turning it into a mosque today. And then one more example I want to give is Saudi Arabia. Saudi has removed almost every single Turkish mosque in the country, claiming these were political monuments. They fought very hard with the Turks to gain independence. So they said, this is a political monument, so we don't need to honor it. India has these types of histories as well. So let's look at the situation as a whole, not try to compare India to Pakistan. Let's also compare it to what's going on in the other countries.
But to that, many would counter that in Europe, it is a restoration of churches, not at the cost of destroying somebody else's places of worship. And Turkey is hardly an example to look up to.
Well, actually, they did restore many churches that had become mosques. They were removed. In Bulgaria, for example, churches were also, they had to be made under Turkish rule lower than mosques. So no, that has definitely occurred. And there was a national awakening. The other point I want to raise is that India as a country, we can always say there's some discrimination. The Islamic population has done fairly well. Muslims, I should say, Hindus in Pakistan are marginalized and have almost disappeared. They have almost no human rights. And no one is quoting Hindu texts to justify that. They are quoting their own local traditions. And in India, for example, we have prominent Muslim journalists who can speak out against what is happening. There are no such Hindu journalists in Pakistan who can speak out about what is happening to them. So the equation of Hindus in India with Muslims in Pakistan is a totally false equation. And let us set that aside. And let us also remember what is going on here is an awakening to India as a whole. Ram Mandir is, Ram is the symbol of Dharma. Ramayana is the greatest, one of the greatest books in the world. Why can't it be honored in a free India? Hindus were under minority rule under the British and Mughals and others. Now we're told that democracy, which is supposedly rule of the majority, Hindus can't have a majority rule because that is offensive to the minorities. So they're wrong as a majority, they're wrong as a minority. You're saying Hindus have no rights. And you don't want Hindus to have rights because you're afraid certain groups that Hindus might vote against them.
Dr. Frawley, when I speak to a lot of young people at work outside, a lot of them ask me, why? What's the need to have a Ram Mandir? How far back will you go to try and reclaim the civilizational pride that you referred to? 100 years, 200 years, 10,000 years, and what's the point?
Well, let's again look at history. And historically speaking, 100 years ago, India was under British rule. And the Ram Mandir has been an issue all along. And you have to understand, Ram Mandir is probably the main symbol of India's history civilization and culture. Why can't you honor that? Other countries honor their traditions. And so I think that's a false statement or equation. And we have to remember, why do people honor India? For example, I live in the United States. I've been involved in Indian teachings. It is for the Indian spiritual traditions, yoga, Vedanta. We have a Ram temple about an hour from here that was set up by the disciples of Neem Karoli Baba. You also have Ramayana in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Buddhism. So why can't India have its civilizational identity? The Greeks and Romans honored that. Columbus was looking for India when he went to America. Let us honor India as a civilization and its literature, its culture, its music and dance is also rooted in the Ramayana. Its festivals. You have all these festivals from Ram Navami connected to Sri Ram. Are those also supposed to go because they are not appropriate? I think the youth may not know the past, but I think they should also recognize that we cannot make India equivalent to Pakistan or even to the United States. India has to be India, and as the Constitution says, that is the India that is Bharat. That is the ancient name. It's not the India named by the modern communist.
I will leave it at that. Dr. Frawley, pleasure as always to speaking to you. Thanks very much for joining us.